All right, we're speaking with Robert Carranza, a leadership coach who empowers leaders and corporate teams with personalized AI leadership solutions. Wow, I can't wait to get into that. He joins me to discuss how we can use copywriting and AI to promote thought leadership, both for our businesses and for our clients. Rob, welcome.
Hey, David, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it. This
No
is a
problem.
humbling experience.
Oh man, it's a great experience to have you, get to talk to you, and really get to learn from you today. So before we start, can you take a moment, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a 25-year combat veteran. I'm a father. I'm a husband. So three kiddos, ages 17, 11, and 14 is the one that's in the middle. My wife and I, we've been married for over 20 years. We're high school sweethearts. I'm originally from South Central Los Angeles. So that's where, the Fresh Prince song, Born and Raised, right? Um,
I'm
the
originally from Philadelphia, so
Are you, oh, look at that, man. I didn't
it's
even
meant to be.
so and you'll see the little puppies running through. So I do have two dogs. One's a Australian cattle mix, and the other one's a little French bulldog. So
Nice.
you'll see them there goofing. But yeah, I think for me, my journey started at a pretty young age. Again, I wasn't really the best high school student, right? I've been blessed with some very focused and intelligent children who are just knocking it out of the park, right? As high school students. I was more distracted when I was growing up, and so the biggest thing for me there was really when it boils down to my faith. When I was 16 years old, I was saved as a follower of Jesus Christ, and 3 weeks later is when I met my wife.
Wow.
Um, so for me, it is something that I say that I'm a person of faith, but I've always struggled. Like the entire theme of this, including how I lead today, I've always had struggles around my faith, being faithful to my
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah.
So for me, that is the like the overarching umbrella of what I still struggle with today. I live comfortable in my skin. I'm very vulnerable with everyone to know that, but we're not perfect, but
Right.
sometimes we're good enough, and it's okay to be imperfect, right? In his eyes. So so yeah, when I was 17, my mom signed the piece of paper to ship me away to the Air Force.
Wow.
It was literally that's how it happened.
Wow.
I showed up from school one day. Well, the night before at dinner, my mom asked me, "Hey, my mom's Panamanian, broken English." She goes, "Hey, what are you gonna do? After high school?" I was like, "I don't know. Maybe I'll hang out with my friends. I'll move out." Just an idiot, right?
Yeah, you
And
set yourself up for that.
so my mom, no kidding, the next day I get home from school and there's a recruiter sitting in my living room the next day. Master Sergeant Roy Dale Ward, I remember him to this day. And he had a VHS back when we had VHS.
Wow.
And then we had a little bubble sheet. And he goes, I'll tell you what, take the bubble sheet, go into a room, knock out this little 30 question test. I'll grade it, and then I'll let you know if you get to watch the video. He goes, if you're not, then I might have to send you to one of my other buddies. I was like, fair enough. So I did pretty well on the video. And then I went ahead and watched the video, and that was really it. He gave me some pretty good advice. He said, make sure you take a technical field. So out of the my enlistment, my very first 5 years was flying satellites.
Wow.
So I flew satellites, and in those first 5 years, I learned. So this was circa 1998 to
Okay.
about 2003. Um, Humbling in the sense that there's this, 17-year-old punk kid. I couldn't even, I couldn't even smoke a cigarette technically, right?
Wow.
When I showed up to my first base, and I was off on my own doing it, man. But
That's
it
incredible.
was definitely still the boneheaded Rob still existed. So what I really learned in that first 5 years of my journey in the Air Force was um, what is the family business? And the family business
Mhm.
for the Air Force was before you go fly the $1 billion satellite constellation, you will become a leader first. And that approach has really just always stuck with me, just because of the way they go through. So they step you through every framework. And some of these are very well known, like Stephen Covey's, the habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people, the forming, storming, norming, performing,
Mm-hmm.
Hershey Blanchard, situational leadership. They go on and on. John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws. But what I really loved about it, and what I hope to also convey in this chat with you, is around the experiential ways that we learn, and how people are able to ingrain those things, but not feel like it's totally like an academic situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. There's so many different ways to go about it, I guess, with the different leadership patterns. And now we have all these different AI and chat GPT tools, and every day it seems to be there's like 30 more that you can use for something.
Exactly. Oh,
You
yeah. Yeah.
you chose to do it and with the approach of leadership, which obviously you have a great background in. Sounds like, just from the couple of minutes we've been talking, a great background in storytelling as well. Tell us about your interest in those, and then kind of walk us through a little bit what you're going to do with
Mhm.
that, because you just left your job, right? And now you're going to be doing this full time. So
Yep.
walk us through this whole process, how you're going to be using AI to help personalize different leadership strategies for folks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity even to talk about it, David. So yes, it always, let's go to our world before AI. Now, AI has been around forever, right? So the
Yeah.
one thing I think that has been cataclysmic since November is ChatGPT. That is really the thing that
Yes.
has turned the world upside down. And I saw one on Twitter today called Cat GPT. I saw another one called Beer GPT. I
Oh
mean,
man.
GPT is not the yin yang, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so really, what does that mean? The language models, really, right? I was even explaining this to a colleague this morning. She's very much in the, I've been doing something for 25, 30 years, Rob. I'm an expert at it, right? And she's an HR professional.
Yeah.
But this ChatGPT stuff, I don't know about that. Like, what about the intellectual property? What about the,
Mm,
because I was even telling her how I'm doing my frameworks, and I'm leveraging a lot of work based on
yeah.
my experiences, but my human interactions are part of that. So how does that work? And the best answer I can give her was, I don't know. Right. I think this is happening so fast that I try to really just zoom out at a 10-mile view and say, is this for good or for bad?
Mm,
And then just really back to my fundamentals of faith, right? So God guides me, and for the purpose, for the kingdom. So back to how I've always looked at this since I was a 17-year-old airman in the Air Force was, and what was just again ingrained by my leaders and my mentors was, if you serve those that you serve with,
mm,
inherently it will come back to you, right? and
right.
and and that's how we grow. That's how we grow the kingdom. Of course, now in that context they were talking about growing the branch, the service,
Sure.
but it was, so the corollaries were so similar, right? I mean, Jesus, the greatest servant leader that ever existed.
Amen.
Right.
Amen,
So
brother.
yeah, man. So where I go back to was, then, all right, life before AI, life before ChatGPT. What was I doing? Well, I was creating these leadership development plans, getting on, these, having these one-on-one interactions, and still trying to find out what made people who they are today, right? We always talk about passion and purpose. What is our why? That was not different by any means. And we'd have those conversations and go through those. I'd have my little folio of scratch notes and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I was telling my friend this morning, I've got a bunch of those saved up in a closet somewhere, right? But there's a ton of that data, right? So now that's data.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just there. And I just kept on kind of compiling those. My first 4 years, again, our country was not at war, but then 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
on basically on my watch, so to speak, while I was
Yeah.
sitting at a terminal. So this idea about our country being at war and being attacked,
Right.
um, you know, I remember back at that time now, because it totally does shape the way I approach my leadership with AI today. I
Mhm.
remember the technology and everything we had then, it didn't matter.
Mm.
Something so bad took over, and it completely devastated our country.
Absolutely.
It didn't matter how much technology we had. And believe me, and I can't say much about what I was doing back then, but so
Yeah.
you can only imagine right now, fast forward, I'm taking two extremes here, but now we've got this great thing like AI ChatGPT, and we've got leadership, and we've got other things that people are putting out there. I've got friends on Twitter that are copyright professionals that are using. First thing I remember in the first the first week after launch, I'm losing my job.
Yep.
There's no way. I'm
I
losing my
even asked Bard, the Googles, I'm like, are
yeah.
you going to replace me as a freelance writer? I would never replace you. Human
No, no,
interaction's still
God, no.
important. Are they telling you to say that? No, absolutely.
Well, it's like, but that is totally,
Yeah.
that's the human thing, right? So again, we always go back to the foundation, the roof of the house, and that's the human connection, human interaction piece. So for me, there's three elements now with how everything, and a framework that I've had to try to develop in how I stay authentic to myself. And it's always about the human interaction and the feeling first. Hearts and minds, right? Those things exist, will always exist, continue to exist. Conversations like this will continue to happen. The second thing is the LM, the language model, ChatGPT, right? So that language model, the data, okay, they've just open AI. What they've done is they've amazingly created an infrastructure where that data was on Google. It was on all over the webs, right? Like, it's not that that stuff is new. It's been
Right.
there. It's just that now when you start typing words, it'll say, hey, I think you were thinking about this too. And then that's what starts to make people freak out a little bit, depending on what your use of it is.
Yeah.
Which is why the prompts, everyone talks about prompt engineering. That's why the
Mhm.
prompts are so important, because
Absolutely.
it's always a garbage in, garbage out type of scenario.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you get the AI, and the AI is like stuff that's been around forever. I was looking at this thing a second ago, David, about and I just did a video on it. In fact, it's about toxic bosses and three
Mhm.
ways that you can take a toxic boss and using AI now to basically like not fix that toxic boss, but at least create a little bit of a level, So they pointed out gaslighting,
Yeah.
manipulation, and
Yeah.
ego,
Mm.
all three big traits of a toxic boss, right? And
Yes.
IBM's created a sentiment analysis tool in AI that will basically tell you based on speech pattern recognition, manuscript, what's on written chat, what's in an email, whether or not that person's a gaslighter.
Whoa. Wow.
Boom, right?
Man,
Like
that's
what?
incredible.
Now, here's the thing. Will anyone ever use it for that? I don't know. But it's something that people are talking about now. If the tool exists and people know it does that, does it
Mm.
give that person some other, I better. And again, I don't know where that goes. It just takes you down this rabbit hole of what ifs, but just something that's truly amazing right now, in one specific use case. So that's what Guiding Lights Leadership does. That's the name of my business. We we're not targeting toxic bosses. By no means are we doing that. We are just simply trying to take a use case, right? Human interaction, human feeling. So in that
Mhm.
one, a person is affected. People have PTSD from bad bosses. I've met them. I've
Right
met
here.
them. They're talking
Yes.
to them right here, dude, right?
Uh-huh.
We're on the
Uh-huh.
phone right now. Now, the language model. How do you do that within a language model? Let's pretend IBM didn't make some cool sentiment analysis tool. Well, what would we do? I could simply go into ChatGPT and I can ask it a broad question such as, um, what are the characteristics of a toxic boss? And I call it the wedding cake. You can go from big, so the big round part of the wedding cake,
Yeah.
to small part, which is like, the people standing on top.
Yeah.
So if you read the prompt in a way that you ask big to small, it will start to window you down,
Mhm.
so you're eating the pieces of cake until you get to the very top. We keep that
Yeah.
part. We don't eat that.
Yeah.
But you'll get to this very high fidelity solution, which
Mhm.
you could turn it into an AI. So in that scenario, if I asked it,
Hmm.
what are the characteristics? I boiled it down to three. Then I could take those three using ChatGPT, and I could just say something similar to, how could I use artificial intelligence if I wanted to, if I noticed that manipulation happens mostly during project management or
Hmm.
during meetings with my boss specifically. How can I create AI to, mitigate, or a tool, or you name it?
Yeah.
And depending on what you've asked it, I just did it this morning. It'll spit out Python code that just, you can copy paste, put it right into Replit, put it into any one of your software packages that will just spit this out. And yeah, then you're set. So three components, right? The human, the interaction, that has to happen. What is the
Mhm.
thing? The LM, the language model. Okay, ChatGPT is the example. I'm going to go ahead and go from big to small. And then the AI. What is the thing that's out there? There's so much AI that is being just created today. It would blow me when they launch GPT-5, which is, I think, right, maybe tomorrow. Who
Yeah.
knows how quick this happens?
June, maybe.
Maybe, right? I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Once GPT-5 happens, I think for sure it will oversaturate us with so many of these tools that we're going to just all get like, and that's where I think a lot of the people are now on the Pareto of 80 to 20 rule. I think 80% of people are just scared now because it's coming out too quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I think there was a company, I believe it was a Chinese company that is replacing freelance copywriters now with ChatGPT.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but here's the thing. And a friend of mine, Leon, this was December-ish.
Hmm.
So we're dated. We're like using
I
GPT-3
know. I know.
dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Uh,
Seriously.
but they did a study where they did what was it? They did a copywriter, they did GPT, and then they did like a hybrid version of that, right? And they scored them. They came out with some way to do metrics to score and analyze and rate. And the copywriter with the GPT scored the highest.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
absolutely just dominated. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
I,
I've been messing with it myself too, and I've noticed like, you get better with those prompts, right? And then you marry it just with like, removing some things, kind of cleaning it up, having it showcasing it the way you want it to be, and then
yeah,
just adding some of your own inputs plus like some stories from personal stories. It's fantastic. And you can get it done. I was doing it for some of my social media, just trying it out to set it up for this week, and I'm like, this is really productive.
I mean, it really does boil down to, and that's where I think the paralysis analysis kicks in.
Yeah.
People, because they don't know, but they know it's this thing, it's almost like, I don't know what I can feed it and what I should feed it.
Yeah.
That's why I do like to keep, I'm a big nerd, Air Force guy. I love frameworks, and that's why I think it works. You know, one personal thing I'll share. So after 25 years of service, I very much I saw the symptoms all along, but I was in denial. I'll just put it very frankly. I knew that there was something going on with me personally in mental health, mental wellness. Being on flight status, flying airplanes, you're really not allowed to say a whole lot about not feeling well. That's your meal ticket. The second
Mhm.
you start telling people you're not feeling well, they'll keep asking questions because they do care. They want to know, but you'll quickly find yourself in a status called the NIF, do not include duties that include, do not include flying status. Basically, it's a
Uh,
grounding. They ground you
gotcha.
and you're not flying anymore. And after a certain amount of time, especially in the Air Force, you lose your qualifications.
Mm.
Then after a certain time after that, you become unqualified. Then after that, the 2 years and change of flight training that you spent putting those wings on your chest, those go away.
Wow.
So that, I mean, and for folks that are in the military with civilian aspirations to go fly for the airlines, you name it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, right? That's a meal ticket.
Wow.
So where I'm going with that is I was very much an in denial type of person. It all came to boil down for me where one day I was sitting in the parking lot of a bowling alley. Um, a person from my base had called to confirm lodging for me for my drill weekend that upcoming weekend.
Mhm.
And I had just come off a really bad experience with lodging the week before, my whole family, they're in there bowling. I had to kind of go outside to take this call.
Yeah.
And that was like, I blinked, and then the next thing I realized, I am screaming at this woman on this phone in the parking lot of this bowling alley. And people are walking in and they're like, what is going on? And could you believe it, David? It was simply because I needed a room that didn't smell like cigarettes. That was the reason I was yelling at this gal,
Yeah.
because then I can't sleep. I'm allergic. And then because I can't sleep, I can't fly the next day. Or if I show up, I fly like, you know what? Like I'm yelling at her. And then I hang the phone up and I like, I'm not a big crier. I think, or I didn't even cry when my kids were born. Um, but I started to cry a little bit. And it was definitely a thing for me that I knew I needed help. So I was
Yeah.
diagnosed with PTSD. I know I was suffering then. I'm struggling now. Struggling's good because that means
Yeah.
you're still, but back then I was kind of suffering.
Yeah.
And what ChatGPT, so fast forward 5 years later, ChatGPT, or excuse me, PTSD, all the acronyms are starting to run together. PTSD gives you a framework with cognitive behavior therapy where you get to deconstruct negative thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, for me, it was almost like every single thing I would hear would be a negative.
Mm.
That person's out to get me. That person's lying. I don't trust them. They are out to get me. You name it. Like it just was nonstop.
Yeah.
So the therapy I took allowed me to deconstruct those, but it was difficult. Just to sit there with your thoughts and why do you feel that way? I mean, it feels like Billy Crystal sitting on the couch, right? Analyze that or whatever. It's like you feel like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I hate I hate it. And I've
Under the
walked,
microscope, you know?
yeah, man, like, and I don't want to talk about like, well, how come tell me about the time in war that you saw your friend get blown away and that
Oh, yeah.
tell me why that made you the way you are. And you're just like, you don't get it, man.
Yeah.
Right. So ChatGPT, when it launched in November, I met some guys from OpenAI that were they already had transitioned to their new company. They're doing something cool now. And
Yeah.
so they showed me a few prompts. I used ChatGPT to basically deconstruct my thoughts using the framework I gave you before. They showed me kind of the three elements, and I turned ChatGPT into like a therapist. Um, I created Python. Now, what I then did, because I'm an engineer by trade, I created a little bit of code for it. I put it into HTML script. It sits on my desktop. I have an app for it that I have on my phone. There's stuff that is way better. Don't get me wrong, but I made this thing.
That's awesome.
I made this thing.
That's so
And I
cool.
never felt that much empowerment for something that affects my life that much. And
Mm.
ChatGPT gave me that. And I right then knew that this would be just the all end all. I said, man, I've got to share this in some form or fashion. And it was basically, through that in scripture, right? There's a book in Matthew that talks about let your good deeds shine,
Mm.
get on the hilltop and shine, let your light shine out.
Yeah.
And that was it. Guiding Lights was born from there. And so that's what I try to provide now. Use cases like that have ranged anything from my own with PTSD, my mom helping her save about $5,000 on her recent car purchase using ChatGPT.
Nice.
The New York Times interviewed me for that one a few weeks ago.
Really? Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. They're putting together a big, as you can imagine, it's the wave. So they're going to do a big thing in like the Sunday edition here coming soon where it's
Awesome.
the good and bad applications. Uh,
Yeah.
so they were pretty geeked out when they heard that story. Um, but yeah, that's what Guiding Lights is all about, man. Like
Wow.
someone who just could feel like down in the barrels and the depths. And now I feel like circling thoughts that I used to always have are all living in Chat GPT right now, to be honest.
Wow.
And someone will hear that and say, Rob, you know what? Your data, your privacy is in that. And I'll say, you know what, man, I hear you. I hear you. But what it's done for me to help grow closer to God and my family, I don't care.
He uses everything, man. Isn't it interesting? He uses
Yeah,
everything.
it does. It
Yeah.
does. And I mean, because having been in the depths of just despair and depression and anxiety, where you feel like no one can understand you, to where now you just are like, I went to a man's camp, a veteran man's camp this past weekend. I cried the entire weekend. Everyone thought I was the biggest baby in the world. David, like I said, I've not cried. I didn't cry when my kids were born, but a song with me hands lifted in prayer makes me sob.
Mm, I love it, brother. I love it. This is great stuff. I mean, you might not be a copywriter, right? Specifically by trade or whatever, but the
Yeah,
stories you have, the vulnerability you have for all of this, I know this is going to really benefit people. I really do.
I hope it does.
Based off of what you're saying and what you're talking about leadership too, and all the beautiful things you're sharing, it got me thinking, when you're talking about different models and mental models and things like that, and how to structure this, kind of using it almost as your own personal therapist, if you will. We also have things like the Clifton Strengths Finder. We have the DISC. We have the Myers-Briggs. When you talk about leadership, I think about two of my top for Clifton Strength are futuristic and strategic. you know,
Yep.
are you considering, are you thinking about, or do you know about other entities using those kind of things, coupling it with AI, and
Yes.
then helping give people really even more like second level, third level, 10th level, even personalized, personality feedback?
Yeah. No, you hit it on the head. I mean, and this is all, I think connecting the dots, people will understand. I don't feel like I'm giving the secret sauce away. That is what we do.
Yeah.
So whether, we talk about strength finders, Enneagram, all these tools, they're fantastic because they are measurements, right? What I tell people is that they are measurements in time.
Mm,
So you can, and I don't know if you've ever done this, David, yourself, but you could take some of those assessments at different journeys of your life.
yeah.
And you might be a little more like in the high D or in the down in the S or like, right. So there's all these different things that life throws at us, which
Mm-hmm.
has to make us adaptable. And that's why I do love what you just said, because if you can at least understand that there is a spectrum that is there, and depending on the season of your life, you might need to be a D. Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You need to be the high D, in fact, because no one else in your group is leading, and otherwise we're not going to get to where we want to get to, right?
Yeah.
But here's other things too that I love with ChatGPT. Again, I don't feel like I'm giving away the secret sauce. I wish more people play with it in this form or fashion. You can create. I did this with Major League Baseball recently.
Okay.
So they've shortened the games by they put rules in, right? Now the
Mm-hmm.
games are shorter. 30 minutes on average is what they're looking at. So
Yeah.
I had to geek out. I know that means money in some form or fashion. It's
Yeah.
a to about $26,000 a minute. That is what that's costing MLB today. We can figure that
Wow.
out. That data's on Google. But here's what I bet, because people are then like, there's no way the owners signed up for $1.7 billion less revenue. What gives? What did they see that we did not see? And
Wait,
what
on this side.
Oh, there
On
it
the,
is. Yes, yes, there you go. So
yeah.
so here's the thing now. Because and my friend hit it on the head, and I was like literally like going through this whole exercise, and he goes, "Yeah, I was just at the Tampa Bay Devil Rays game, and it was so fun watching the clock countdown, and you thought the pitcher wasn't going to get the pitch off." And I go, "That's very similar to like an NBA shot clock, like
Mm-hmm.
building a little suspense there."
Yeah.
So engagement, things that aren't in the game today, how do you measure that? Right. So fast forward that all the way over to what I'm doing with leadership now is, how do you know about some very specific scenarios? We've always had feedback in leadership, like one I loved getting from a boss. Rob, you're not technical enough. I'm a mechanical engineer. I've flown airplanes. I've flown satellites. I've got an MBA. I've
Yeah.
got multiple certifications across all these different 25 years of just hammer stories that say, I am technical.
Uh,
That person will get me into a one-on-one and say, you're not technical enough.
Dude, I had the same thing happen to me, but for writing. I've always been a great writer. I'm not patting myself on the back. People have
No,
told me this.
please.
I wrote
Yeah.
for Forbes at one point. I'm writing for University of Phoenix now. And my boss had the audacity to tell me after I had already written for Forbes and had articles out, Dave, you're really not that good of a writer. I'm like, who are you talking to? That's like my one thing that God gave me. What are you talking about?
And dude, what does that do? What
Oh
is that?
yeah.
It's a label, right? It's a thing.
Shockingly enough, it was one of my toxic bosses.
Toxic bosses, yeah, right? The correlation is strong,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But here's the thing, right? So now what I can do is I can then take a person, because I lived it, and say if they're getting feedback like that and it's
Mm.
not tied to some kind of performance measurement, there's new AI out there called K15 where it's basically it is performance measurement indicators, right? They use a philosophy from OKRs, objective key results. It goes through that whole thing. There's even a book on this thing. So what you can do is you can then find some very specific areas in your performance that would then, okay, boss, I'm not technical enough. In your eyes, what would that look like? Well, if they have something to say, these three things sounds good. Why don't we load those into K15 and then let's just have, and the AI will do it for you. It's just now that you have to create these different, well, what would that look like? It'll help you create the metric, the measurement. And then when you get to like your mid-year performance or your end of year performance, you're showing data. There's
Mm-hmm.
no hearts and minds. There's no like, oh, but I thought, no, hey boss, I'm telling you what, you signed up for this. So when you get the guy who or gal who gaslights you and is
Mm-hmm.
like, oh no, I never said that. You said that. You said you weren't technical enough. Like, because man, I tell you what, this is all true story. I kid you not. Um, but and that's what gives me the hope of these measurements, these unique measurements. That's really where I feel it's going to be the game changer for language models. GPT-5, you're going to be able to talk to this thing and just say like, this is something I do in my copywriting workflow. I don't know what it really means, but when I start writing to when I stop writing, it's a flow. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that my pen has to be to paper or that my clickety clack has to start and stop. It just means that I'm creating. So, what is that flow called? What's that momentum called? I don't know what that's called, right? There's a corollary to that exact scenario, and it's surgeons when they walk into an OR from the second they've scrubbed in to when the second they leave, they want everything to be perfect. They don't want to toggle with the Bluetooth speaker that's not playing their Skinnerd. They don't want to talk to the scrub nurse to say, why in the world did you give me that? Yeah, they don't, they want it to be perfect. And when it's not, it's a bad day because they've been
Mm-hmm.
there for 16 hours, right? So these unique things that I'm calling out right now, everyone who's doing something today in their profession, if you can find out, because David, you are so good at what you do, if you can find out how to measure it or what it is you're trying to measure, GPT will develop a metric for you. And before you know it, man, you're changing the game.
Man, wow, you've given me so much value in this that I look at the list of questions that I prepared just to kind of guide the conversation, and I'm like, there's so many. We could take this for like we could do a whole series just on this, man.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
this is incredible stuff.
it's
Um,
amazing.
what I do want to ask you though, for the
Yeah.
for the folks who might be scared, and I know you
Mm,
gave a little bit, you touched on it a little bit, but the
yeah.
folks who might be scared or hesitant or worried that, hey, ChatGPT or some other AI model is gonna replace my job or put me out of business or hey, I'm a lawyer. And all of a sudden, I'm gonna be out. No one's gonna want to hire me. They're just gonna bring their computer with them, and whatever the judge says, they'll object. The computer will object.
That's
So,
right. No, dude, that is great. Yeah.
right. So, what do you say to those folks? How can we
Yeah.
kind of, it was almost like a light switched on for me earlier this week, or I'm sorry, last week. I'm like, you know, Dave, you can either, be scared of this,
Yeah.
or you can embrace it and be one of the guys that know it,
Yeah.
and can help other people with it.
Yeah.
And then, you're ready to go and prepared for stepping into this, fourth generation industrial evolution or whatever people want to
Yeah.
call it. So
Yes.
what do you say to me? What do you say to folks like that just kind of need a kick in the pants to kind of take ownership of their situation?
What I would say, dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. Embrace it. That is
Mm.
the key. You have to embrace it. Again, everyone is so God made us all in a way that we're uniquely special in some way. His unique way of making you and I special, that's the thing I challenge people. I pray if you are saying, I'm going to go ahead and use this tool for the first time, use that gift.
Yeah.
Go use that gift. For a friend of mine, it was woodworking. He does like CNC, makes cool furniture. It's a hobby for him.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, every time he talks to me about that, his eyes twinkle. He loves it. He
Yeah.
loves it. And don't get me wrong, he's an engineer. The guy makes buku dollars. He's amazing. But it carries over. It's like, but can you, there's other things in our lives that we aren't even doing right now that God has meant us to do.
Mhm.
And this is such the catalyst that's going to get you to do it. To the medical billing encoder person that I spoke to a few weeks ago, she doesn't know how to do. She tackles with macros on Excel, but didn't
Mm.
know specific macros that could potentially, efficiency workflow. My
Yeah.
wife does a little bit of that. I ping her for a little bit. Boom, ChatGPT. This is what I need. Here you go. So what I tell you is that if you're, and we all are, we're all good at something. You've access to this tool. Go use it. Use it with that one area in mind. Start big to small. Hi, this is my first time using you. What can you do for me? And I kid you not, if you talk to that thing like a person, it will whittle you down to where you're holding the people in your hand. And then all of a sudden, you will be blown away by what you can do with it moving forward.
Oh, I love that, man. You got so much knowledge, and I mean, I can see how you're going to be successful in this new endeavor, and I have no doubt that you're stepping right into that. In terms of, working with clients and client acquisition,
Hmm.
I don't know if you've used AI for that or just in general, and take a minute, kind of talk to us about how you're getting clients, how
Yeah.
a new copywriter can get some clients, and then also possibly use
Yeah.
AI for lead generation.
Yeah, I would say I'll ping two influencers that I anytime anything hits LinkedIn, I pop them up. They're on my notify thing. It's Isabella Bedoya and Rachel Miller. They
Okay.
are, and I mean, female AI leaders. I call out the female part because females are, they're like the spearhead right now for all this AI stuff, which is amazing. I could sit there, I could show my daughters, like, check, this is the tip of the spear, and look who's leading this stuff. So
Yeah.
definitely check out Izzy, Rachel. They're amazing. And what I do is they put out so many handy tools. A lot of these things are like lead magnets. So what could you do? All right.
Yeah.
So let's say I was at this veterans man camp with a friend. He had never heard of it, but they make amazing cookies. Cookies is the thing they do. So what I recommended was, okay, how far out do the people that come and eat your cookies? Oh, Rob, what does that matter? Well, let's go down this rabbit hole. Talk about some things that are very unique. And what about he knew his ingredients down to the scent of
Mm.
what makes a cookie. And then he also had done little experiments, little design of experiments to understand what are his seasonal cookies. I'm like, have you done the Pareto chart on all those? And tell me, he's like, oh, I got all that data. I'm like, dude, how cool would it be? Like, I'm an engineer. If we were to create something in ChatGPT that is just an art, because he was always talking about how do I get the word out? I don't really have, I'm not creative. I don't, like, dude, here's how you do it. You go find the person that's eating your cookies, and then you find something they know in their other world, tie that together, and bring them in. So there's an article out there floating around how a design of experiments. It sounds like people are designing cookies, instead of making them.
I love it.
Like
I love it.
it's a skunk works, right? And
Designer cookies. Yeah.
design them, we make them.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So, dude, yeah,
So
that's what I would advise. Like, take
I
that thing
love it.
and just spin it 100 different ways.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So hey, tell us really quick, and then we're gonna wrap things up here. Um, Tell us about this win you had recently where you jumped from corporate world,
Yeah.
working for yourself. For those that are thinking about doing the same thing, leaving the full-time job, eventually taking freelancing or side business full-time, take a second, tell us how you made it work and how you see it working going forward.
Yeah, I think it always has to be, for me in my life, Rob's humble opinion, 2 cents, was that there's always got to be a little nudge of faith. God has
Mm.
always done this to me in my life where he's been like, go on now, do this. And sometimes I've been so vain and
Yeah,
dumb,
yeah.
big dummy, that I chose security instead. So
Oh yeah,
maybe that's the very first thing,
yeah.
right? Is, and I get it. We all got bills to pay. My daughter's going to college in the fall.
Oh,
That
God
that
bless you.
tuition, that is gonna, right? That bill's coming. I mean, the wife and I were just talking about that right before we hopped on here.
Well,
It's
you had to have faith doing knowing that's coming up and then making the leap.
Yeah, right. And but it's so maybe that's where I started, and maybe that's where a lot of people just don't even begin. The foundation, the why, the purpose is strong enough for you to really mobilize and move. There's a guy on TikTok yesterday. He does affiliate marketing. In his 50s, he picked this up. He started just simply, now he's using AI. I could tell he's made his right. But he's streamlined. He's more efficient now. But
Yeah.
before, it was simply the grind, the Gary V grind that we always hear about, right?
Yep.
Like, have you gone out to the garage sale? Like, I mean, so maybe that's what it is, right? I think people either want that and are comfortable with it, or they're like, I could do that, but man, I would need to trade this off instead. And that's scary. So by no means am I going to just be like, here's my Instagram post, take the leap, or like, where people then feel defeated if they don't. No, it's like, my journey was simply that I had to believe. My faith for me was more important than the result of whether or not when I took that leap. And if it failed, I'd learn. And guess what? I can go hop back in and go do a project manager job, something with aviation, like you name it, right?
Yeah.
But if I didn't do this now, looking back when I'm in my 60s, my 70s, and what would I say then,
Right.
right? To me, that was going to be one of these things where, for me, I had to be able to look myself in the mirror and say that I gave this a shot. So if that's a strong enough reason for the people hearing this, listening to this, go for it.
I
Go
love it.
for it. And I'm here for you. And that's where, again, I'll do stupid stuff, right? People are like, Rob, you're nuts. I'll create leadership development plans for people. Scrolling on LinkedIn, I'll find someone who just posted that they're starting a new role. I won't know them. I'll just tag them, create something using AI, using all the tools we talked about, and I'll give them something that's super personalized, and I haven't met them for a single minute.
Man, I love that. Wow. Oh man, so many gems in this one. Look, you already gave us two folks to check out on LinkedIn. I'll make sure I get those profiles. I'm gonna link them up in the notes for this. But if you give us one or two more resources, whether they're another influencer or some other kind of tool that can help us do what we do, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I would say right now, because it's tried, true, and tested, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell. I'm a humongous fan. Every page of that book for me is earmarked to where it almost now has to be like, I gotta like unfold it back again
Yeah,
and create a new
they're all
crease.
stuck together. Yeah,
Yeah, like
I love it.
that book is going to get you through 80% of whatever life is throwing at you. And people are like, well, Rob, I'm not a leader, so I don't have a title. that's one of the biggest myths of leadership, is that you think you have to have a title.
Yep.
If you're influencing people and you're leading change, by definition, you are a leader. And
Absolutely.
that book will put a humongous framework behind you in multiple areas.
Yeah.
And I that's one that I just absolutely love. The other one that I love, that, you know, for maybe the entrepreneurs that are just sitting there second guess themselves, I'm a big Jocko Willink fan. So if you don't
Mhm.
if you've never listened to Jocko and just listened to that guy and watch his post of 4:30 in the morning going to get it right, I don't know, the guy does it. I'm like, man, I'm like 6:45,
Yeah.
bro.
Hit the snooze button, wait to 7:30.
Yeah, a picture of me hitting the snooze, right? But dude, it's crazy, right? So Jocko's he's got a, you know, obviously extreme ownership.
Yeah.
He's even
Yep.
got a tactics and strategic leadership book out right now that's just killing it.
Oh man, awesome. Well, Rob, this has been awesome, man. It's such a great conversation. I would love to do something on Twitter Spaces with you sometime in the future.
Got
Do
it,
more of
man.
this, more of these kind of conversations. This was fun. This was one of the better interviews and the fun interviews that I think I've done. And I've done podcasts and other kind of shows and stuff. So I appreciate that. So you get a minute now to let us know where we can connect with you, where we can find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone listening, if this is something that is speaking to your heart, again, I come at this from a faith approach through my military experiences, 25 years of really just built up, proven leadership. www.glightleaders.com. All over the social medias, Rob C. Leadership. Check out a couple videos, right? It's even just one of these things. I love talking to people from all over, because I'm still learning to become a leader, and it never ends. It's always a process. And the more I can learn from folks, it gives me an opportunity to funnel it right back. So just humble for the opportunity again, Dave, to be on this. Just amazing. I just am in that like honeymoon state of warmth and love. And for me, it's how can I give that back?
Oh man, that's beautiful. Look, I wish you the best of luck. All of God's blessings in this new endeavor, everything you're going on with your family, and I look forward to big things from you, and hopefully get a chance to work with you again in the future. So, thank you so much.
All right, brother. Hey, appreciate it again.